All right, again, thank you everybody. This is the second First Nations Public Service Secretariat webinar. It is being used as a platform to share information with other BC First Nations that are doing a lot of really great work in a time where it's very uncertain and they're just dealing with immediate change on a day-to-day basis. So we want to provide this space for them to share. Before I introduce our speakers today, I just want to introduce some other members of our team. We have Jahan Casey, who's the director of the First Nations Public Service Secretariat. And we have Bronwyn Geddes, who is supporting and managing our mentorship initiative that we have going on, and a number of other things she kind of just helps us out with, so thank you. I just like to make a point, like I said, this platform is really being used for information sharing, where there's a wealth of health-related information out there being shared by other organizations and institutions that are mandated to do that. We really just want to be able to support communities in any way, and that is by providing this platform so everybody can share. We're going to start with Collette Sunday from Upper Nicola Band. She's a band administrator. She's going to share a little bit about what Upper Nicola has been doing thus far to deal with COVID-19. It's kind of been a crazy time. After Collette is done speaking, we'll move on to Rob Bullock from Ahousaht First Nation. He's the executive director, and then we'll get on to some Q&A. There is a Q&A function at the bottom of your screen. Please submit specific questions that you want answered live to the Q&A, and we'll do our best to answer all those questions within the amount of time. We've only allotted about 30 to 45 minutes because we're taking up time of Collette and Rob, and we know that they've got a lot more to do kind of just now they're dealing with everything going on in their community. So I will hand it over to you, Collette.
Okay, Collette Sunday. I'm the band administrator here at Upper Nicola Band. We are one of the 7 Okanagan Nation communities. We are located 50 kilometers east of Merritt, about half an hour to Merritt and an hour to Kamloops, where we're situated right now. So we have Upper Nicola Band Chief and Council have called for a state of emergency on March 18th. So we are in day 6 of our response to this local emergency. So I serve not only as a band administrator, but I serve to lead the team in our Emergency Operations Center. And is it working right now, Sid?
Yes, it's working.
Yeah, I just want to make sure I wasn't freezing up there. So, so I serve as the director of the EOC. And so we have been situated here within our gymnasium. I'm just in the kitchen right now, but our team is in the bigger part of our gym. And the reason why we situated our Emergency Operations Center here in our gymnasium is because our band office, like many others across the country, do not have proper air circulation. So we don't have an HVAC within our band office. So we had to move to a safer place. So in that regard, we have, along with other First Nations, asked our employees to go home. So as of March 19th, our employees have been working at home for the most part. Essential services are still being carried out. Staff are still carrying out their roles within the confines of their home with the equipment that we provided to them, such as a laptop. We've really started to come online to use Microsoft Office Teams. So we're communicating virtually, and we also have purchased the Zoom program. So there's 2 platforms that people can utilize to communicate with one another at the administrative level, chief and council level. We did a couple of teleconferences as well, but to keep costs down, we know that Microsoft Teams is the most economical one there. So a big learning curve for some of us, but we're getting through it just like everything else with COVID-19. So how is Upper Nicola Band responding to this crisis, this pandemic? After the province issued a state of emergency, we followed suit shortly afterwards. We were in communication with the local emergency management branch of the Central Region out of Kamloops. We were participating on their calls. We brought information together at the emergency management team. We brought out our emergency management plan, as well as our pandemic plan, lined them up to identify, okay, what should we be doing? It tells us all right there. Some of our documents, such as our pandemic, was not up to date, but it's a good reference. It's good enough to run with. So it'll provide us some good guidelines on what we need to do. So right after the 18th, after the declaration was made, we had a meeting of staff. I had meetings with our health staff, with our administration staff, and I went online through a teleconference to inform as many people, to hear it from me, the administrator, to say this is what is going to happen going forward. The council has issued the local emergency. Now we're going to start our response. So everybody was all going to be on the same page from day one. So our EOC, we've operated it in 2017 and 18 in response to the spring freshet and flooding in our communities. So this is not the first time. So we're a little bit, we've exercised the plan for sure. And we're not as stressed out as we would have been back in 2017. But this type of emergency is a lot different to deal with, a lot of unknown ground. So we are working hand in hand with Upper Nicola Band Health Office, who are the ones that are leading review of the health technical points and how we should be caring for our individuals. So two things we're doing: we're getting firewood for our community members because there's still snow here on the ground and people are not able to go out and get that firewood. And also we're working to assist in providing some staples in terms of groceries. We want to limit people leaving the community, driving that 50 kilometers, 100 kilometers to go into other cities, or to go to cities to limit the risk of the spread of coronavirus. So in that effort, we've done a bulk purchase. We're going to be looking to deliver those foods in the next week. And the firewood has already been delivered home to home already. So we were working quickly with council members that were helping us out. So we've come together united in the time of crisis, as we always do. Don't know if you want me to keep going, or is that good, Selena?
That's good. I will hand it over to Rob. Thank you, Collette.
Good afternoon, and here's hoping that everyone is doing well and is as healthy as possible, and that your staff and your community members are as healthy as well. The key things in Ahousaht, if you're not familiar where Ahousaht is, it's just north of Tofino by water only, or by flying in. So our first step was to ensure that we were limiting the people in and out of the nation, and to notify all the water taxi and boat drivers exactly what and who is allowed in and out of the nation. Our EOC, Emergency Operations Center, was set up quite a few years ago, just after the Leviathan sinking off the coast of Ahousaht. So when we took on that, we did it just as a nation, and then soon after set up the EOC. So much like Collette, we've had an EOC that's been operational for a number of years and is well staffed and well practiced. Ahousaht is also a charter member of the Coastal Nations Coast Guard Auxiliary. So we have a number of people that are ready and willing to help us with regards to water safety, getting people in and out of Ahousaht, and so on. Early on, as Collette mentioned, our emergency, state of emergency, was posted March 16th by our elected chief counsel. And as a result, we've plugged directly into a number of suppliers and getting food delivered to the docks in Tofino. Cisco, which supplies a number of the grocery stores around BC, is very good at having smaller orders being ordered and paid for and delivered. Case lots, which is out of Quality Foods, they're available as well. Cold supply storage in Nanaimo. All of these are willing and able to take on orders to deliver directly to nations. Agree that some nations are a bit further away than others, but a number of these suppliers are fully willing to work with everyone on what those are. And if you have any questions, please indicate that in the box when the time comes on that. So we've been plugging into a number of the funding agencies. If your nation hasn't received an email from Indigenous Services Canada, likely from your financial services officer on the weekend, Ahousaht was given a specific amount of money based on a formula that ISC has, not emergency money. For those nations that have signed off on that by March 31st, will arrive before or on April 6th. There is more funding coming to First Nations per the legislature that sat, I believe, yesterday, and that was approved. We have phone calls and constant communication into the Minister of Indigenous Relations, Scott Fraser's office with the province, and all other funding agencies to do with health. So First Nations Health Authority for supplies, and the Red Cross for supplies, and Island Health, obviously, for more supplies. Our EOC and Chief and Council haven't rested. They've been ongoing using technology and platforms such as Zoom and or Hangouts and or Team to be in constant communication and ensuring that all is well and that we're doing as much as we can to take care of the community. A number of community members are in isolation, self-isolation, be it they have come in from somewhere else and come to Ahousaht, or they're not feeling well as in community, so they are in self-isolation. We do have plans to evacuate should any other emergencies come along, such as a tsunami. We had that small little warning last night from an earthquake near Alaska, Russia, and thankfully that didn't come to fruition. So my advice to band administrators and executive directors is plug directly into your FSO. If you don't know who they are, this is a good time to do that, and to connect with the Public Service Secretariat on just collecting and getting information. And don't be inundated by this. There's a lot of information out there, a lot of bad information, so be sure you're getting it from the proper sources. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you very much, Rob and Collette. We appreciate it. We have 2 questions so far. I'm going to start with the first question, and either both of you can answer or one of you can take a stab at it. So first question is, are First Nation members still able to apply for PWD Income Assistance during the pandemic? And are First Nations processing these applications and directing members to health clinics to complete applications?
The short answer is yes, but the more connected the nation is to your health office, the more efficient that process will be. Collette?
Our income assistance worker comes into the office when she has scheduled appointments. I'm not going to speak for her. I haven't heard of any intakes at this time. I know there were a few intakes that happened just prior to the emergency being declared. I haven't heard of any, I haven't been briefed on any new cases of people wanting to come on board. So I know that even some of the doctors in Merritt, they're not seeing people in their clinics. So, they're having to communicate with their clients over the telephone, and they're doing telehealth almost. So they're to limit the risk of people heading into their facilities.
Thank you both very much. The next question is either of your communities providing supports for off-reserve members?
Great question, and that is forthcoming apparently per the National Chief for off-reserve members, part of the $315 million funding package for First Nations across Canada that the federal government apparently passed yesterday will include monies for off-reserve. Now, some nations like Ahousaht are providing some food distribution for off-reserve people, and the organization of that really is dependent on each nation. But right now, the official answer that we've been told is no, but it's coming.
And for Upper Nicola, we have been getting calls from community members prior to the emergency being declared and looking for support for off-reserve members, because the majority of our members do live off-reserve, and that's only due to the fact that we have a lack of housing, lack of economic development. Those are all priorities we're working on. But nonetheless, we know that we've never said no to our community members, so we're gonna do our best to help our community members that are in need. So we're looking at that right now in our EOC. We'll be Chief and Council is aware that there are requests out there, so we're going to look to address those the best we can. And I know that what we've been asked to do, we haven't had the time to do it yet, but it's on our to-do list, is to compile a list of all resources where anybody can access these type of extra assistance out there. So how do people apply for EI? So we learned on the EMBC call last week that there's a particular number for EI to call. I just heard this morning that EI is going to be processed at a speed, at a quicker speed, I guess, and there might be one flat rate for people that have been affected by COVID-19. So these are things that we need to learn about, get the facts straight, get the information on a one-page summary sheet that we can provide out to our members. So we'd like to do that on Facebook, as well as a distribution on our website and in our newsletter that we've been distributing on Reserve.
Great.
Good example of our website too is Ahousaht.ca has the updates, has the information, has a link to the Facebook page that the Emergency Operations Center is running with Q&A. So please take a look at that.
Great. Thank you very much. The next question was, how are you handling EOCs and shortage of staff available?
Well, right now, our message to all staff is that all hands are on deck, even though you may be sent not to work at your location, but working from home, checking in with your manager on a daily basis to ensure that we are giving orders as needed for the EOC. So far, our EOC is well staffed. There is no shortages, and everyone is expected to help where food distribution is needed or where there's anything else needed in the community. So everyone's aware that while we know that the funding will continue to come in for the nation, there's no layoffs, or there's all assurance that all staff will be paid in the meantime until this is over. So everyone's expected to chip in.
In terms of us, what we were able to do is we have a core group of people that staff the EOC. We are having a bit of a shortage in terms of where's their capacity level, where's their expertise lie. So we're having a bit of challenges, but we do what we do best. We juggle as many things as we have to on a daily basis, just like we're in the band office. But at the same time, we're reaching out to some of our staff to assist us in doing the connections with our community members. So we have a call out list, approximately 9-10 staff members that are calling to check on community members at 2 times a week. So we're just starting to initiate that to get the communication out to community members and have them have a way to bring communication into us at the EOC. So we're just not relying on people to call the one number, but we're actually going to be connecting to all community members on the Reserve. And we have, we'll be taking calls from off Reserve members, and we put our email address out there. So we're doing our best to stay in contact with all.
Great. Thank you. Next question. Are social development officers able to waive the EI and ministry forms process that applicants have to complete before their applications for income assistance can be approved?
I think if you're a First Nation that has a 10-year grant, then you're going to have some flexibility. If you are not, but I know, like, for instance, Upper Nicola is a recipient of the 10-year grant, so we will have some flexibility around program delivery. So I can't say for what others are having to deal with. That would be a good question for other First Nations that are not in the 10-year grant. And I think, of course, FSOs, funding services officers, Indigenous Services Canada staff, they're also working. They may be working from home, but they're available as well.
So the message from Catherine Lapa, the regional director for BC from ISK, was that all reporting, all requirements, anything back from the nation to ISK is on hold, that the priority is to take care of community members and the priority is to get things done in an expedited basis. So whatever the nations need to do, whatever you need to do to take care of your members, as Collette said, please plug into your FSOs, anybody at ISK can help. They're all working from home via their laptops, doing the best they can to support nations. But anything to do with getting things done faster is encouraged.
Great, thank you. I just want to make a point of saying that there is, the First Nations Leadership Council has a website with information for First Nations, as well as the First Nations Public Service Secretariat. We've dedicated a page specifically with to point you in the right direction of additional for Indigenous Services Canada and other institutions too as well. The next question is, additional federal benefits to support people are based off of income tax returns. Are First Nation members able to access supports to complete tax returns to qualify for these additional benefits if their taxes are not up to date? This may be a challenging one to answer.
Well, from our perspective, we don't require any kind of taxation forms to be provided for social development help. So all we ask is the member to contact our social development team, and they will see to it to get the right information and the right processing done for the members that are needed. So again, if someone's stuck, they need to plug into their financial service officer is the key first person to go to for any kind of questions to guide you through that. If you don't know, and if you do know, like I said, social development in your nation should have a good direction on what to do in that case.
Oh,
Collette, you're muted.
sorry. Yeah, sorry, I'm trying to unmute you. 1 second.
Okay, was that question geared to off reserve members though? Can you repeat it?
It wasn't specified whether it was off reserve or on reserve.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, but just in general, support available for those who have yet to complete their tax return.
Yeah, I know some First Nations have been able to help their members to complete their tax returns. I know it could be a challenge if you are dealing with in a crisis situation, but I think, like Rob said, if you're accessing programs on reserve, I don't think those are going to be requirements. I'm not sure about off reserve programs that they need to access.
She did clarify it was on reserve.
Oh,
so,
okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think there should be any issues. Definitely not.
Yeah. Also, just I'd like to make a point of saying that, well, the First Nations Public Service, not an expert on income assistance, but we can definitely ask Indigenous Services Canada to share that information with the Facebook group that we have established. It's the First Nations Administrators Network. We encourage you to join that. It's another platform that's been made available for information sharing. We are partner-based, so we're more than happy to reach out to anybody to try and share as much information as possible. We actually don't have any more questions. Does anybody want to add another question in the chat or to the Q&A? We've answered all of them thus far. We're doing pretty great. So. Nope.
Can I add one thing?
Sure.
Make sure your accounting departments have set up codes that earmark all expenses related to this emergency into proper buckets. So for example, Ahousaht has set up a COVID virus account for food, for transportation, for emergency supplies, for a variety of other tasks and expenses as we incur it, so that when the day comes, we can charge back to the federal government's funding or Emergency Services BC or what have you, and have all of the accounting taken care of properly. So this may mean that a lot of your regular accounting codes will fall into these new buckets, but it will help you become more efficient in your reporting and in getting that money reimbursed when that comes.
Thank you. Jahan, you just joined with video. Would you like to chime in and say anything?
Sorry, I just wanted to note there was a question. I think you're probably getting them fast and furious, but I saw someone ask, how are nations handling EOCs with the shortage of staff available?
Yes, we did answer that.
You covered that? Okay, sorry.
And there's actually 3 more questions that just came in. So Rob mentioned some sources for bulk orders of food. Can you elaborate on that?
So Cisco, SYSCO, they are a supplier of major grocery stores around the province. They can arrange delivery. So if you send your details into the Public Service Secretariat, I can send them the details and hopefully we can give you the information on them. And I'll send the list to the group here via the Secretariat so that you can get it on your website. and I'll include the contacts for each so that you can reach out and they can help you directly. I've basically been cold calling a number of suppliers, and some other suppliers that we've had good relationships with, they've expanded their service to accommodate our specific needs.
Great. Thank you. The next question, it was really just a thank you for sharing what your administrators are doing to serve the communities and support provided. So hands up to both of you. Appreciate it. Next question is, are either of you having any problems with some members not abiding with self-isolation? If so, is Chief and Council willing and able to take steps to deal with these individuals? Also, any issues with racism?
Well, first question first, there's been a number of people that have been acting badly and or not isolating when they should be. And so we're relying on honesty to ensure that the proper information is being, I just touched my face, I shouldn't do that. The self-isolation, we're relying on honesty and direct communication by those people. And so far so good. There's been a number of people that have communicated directly to our EOC as to where they've been and what they're doing in self-isolating. However, there are a number of people who haven't been behaving too well, and they've been sat down by either the local RCMP or Chief and Council or both to basically be told shape up or ship out, because there's no room for that. And as far as racism goes, no, not anything that we've encountered in the towns. However, I do know that a lot of the locals are finding it difficult to work with some vendors, and just basically not so much racism, but everything's shutting down. So there's hotels that are shutting down, and suppliers, and of course jobs that are disappearing. So it's just making it harder and harder to make ends meet and to figure out what the next steps are. The key thing is don't panic. Don't work together as a team and ask the questions to those who are around and to this group as well.
Great.
Yeah, and in terms of Upper Nicola, we have not issued a shelter in place yet. That is a mechanism or a tool that we can call upon in our emergency operation plan, or in our emergency management plan. But what we have been just doing is requesting that people stay home. We're requesting that they limit their travel outside of the community, outside of their close confines of their home. Like, it's no problem going out for walks and that, but don't gather in large groups. We did advise yesterday to our members that we may have to look at the shelter in place. We're just monitoring the situation to see how things are, and we believe that people are still safe at this point, but there's still always going to be that concern.
Great, thank you. Collette, maybe back to you on this one. How are you determining the needs of the community?
What we're doing, that we're just starting to do late last night, is we started to do call outs to each individual. Like, the health staff is already doing their call outs to their clients that they deal with. And so they're ensuring that their needs are met. But in terms of all of the other households on the reserve, we've been doing through the call outs, we're giving them advice or giving them the heads up. These are supports that are on their way that should be here within the next week. We do a health check-in with them, and then we also ask them, are there other supports that you require? So I know in one instance we heard from one of our staff that gave an example, like there's some special dietary needs amongst our people. So we said, okay, we're going to start taking note of those and see what we can do to actually provide those in one-on-one supports for individual members, because we can't expect that one case fits all. So we have to be flexible, be accommodating to our community members, but at the same time doing our best to limit the travel that our staff are doing, people that are working in the EOC. So there's many things to review when it comes to risk assessment.
Great, thank you. Go ahead, Rob.
Same sort of thing in Ahousaht. We've been delivering or having a food bank, if you will, since Friday. And if anyone comes up that has specific needs, or we're asking them for specific needs, specific foods, we're very cognizant of diabetic food, diabetic liquids like proper milk, lactose intolerant people, and the elders. The elders are our primary concern. So a number of elders are in self-isolation. ensuring that we have the proper medical requirements, supplies, and food supplies for each and every one of them. We are asking that the community stand down at 10:30 at night. Our hereditary leaders have decreed that there's a community stand down or curfew in place by 10:30, so the streets are to be cleared. So far, as I said earlier, there's only been a handful of people that have not abided by just overall social proper handling. And social distancing's been good. The only challenge is getting people on and off the island via water taxis, of course. Can't be 6 feet apart in a situation like that. So gloves, hand sanitizing and disinfecting each boat after each ride is ongoing.
Great, thank you. Next question is, my question is about our local grocery store. We are seeing strangers buying lots of groceries and leaving town. Can we ask the store to sell to locals only at first?
In Tofino Co-op, they are opening to locals and elders only for the first few hours of the store opening. And that request came from the community to them, and they abided by that. So all you can do is ask. Private businesses are, it's up to them to do what they want. But I've seen the same sort of hours here in Victoria for elders and those that are special needs to open up early or stay late.
Great, thank you. Collette?
We have not had any direct communication with the stores in Merritt. I think we just have to do our best to access the foods and products that we need. And really, we're just doing our best to do a bulk purchase that's supposed to arrive here on April 1st to supply the basic staples to our community members. And we're just letting them know that this is a supplement to say, we want to minimize your travel, so we want to provide you some foods, and that'll be prioritized in terms of who's most at high risk. So those that are 65 or that have compromised immune systems, those that have other health issues, those are the ones we want to be concerned about. And I think that's how we're handling that.
Great, thank you. The next question wasn't really a question. It's from Roy Spinks, who is the HR manager at Lytton First Nation. And again, he just thanks you and raises his hands to you. So thank you, Roy. Next question is, how are you mitigating financial risk exposure?
Budget. Our CFO will not allow us expenditure unless it's thoroughly vetted. So we're looking to ensure that we do proper planning. So those are some of the key functions within an emergency operations center. We know that there's a need for some spending quickly, but if there's large amounts of monies, we must ensure that is there any funding available that we receive funding for? If not, do we need to go to external parties to request these funds? So as Rob had mentioned, Indigenous Services Canada will be forwarding money to each First Nation. That's not going to cover all of the needs most likely. So we may have to look into own source funding. And prior to this emergency, through our chief and council, we had a budget put in place for emergencies if the event ever occurred.
Thank you.
Two things. One is I'm the CFO for Ahousaht as well. So, and this kind of stems back to when Ahousaht was entering and came out of management action to have the CFO and the executive director as one person. So it's kind of good that all decisions go through a financial lens. Much like Collette says, there is a budget for these type of things, but at the end of the day, you got to do what's right for the nation within what financial constraints you have available. So remember, you had gaming revenue received, you have your April 1st payments from ISP should be coming in. This additional monies that we talked about at the top should be coming in by April 6th or earlier. So there's a lot of extra funding available, but make sure you're accounting for it properly. Make sure it's for the right reasons. And I'm reading ahead, but this is something that we've attacked head on in Ahousaht is if anyone needs financial assistance, such as having their rent waived, they have to write that to chief and council to make the decision. It's if you're still working, and all of the staff in Ahousaht are still working and still getting paid, then we expect rent to be paid. If you're out of work, and there's rent that needs to be waived, then that application would be handled one-on-one. Sweeping decisions and sweeping expenditures can't really be done in these times. They have to be thought of one-on-one or individually so that the right decision is made for the right solution for the right person.
Mm-hmm. Great, thank you. And Rob did kind of touch on the next question, which was how are administrators handling rent for members who are not working at this time, and what about mortgages? So Collette, would you like to add anything to that?
So because this is only 6 days new or 6 days old, we have not started to deal with any rent issues per se. So I can see it coming up on the horizon because rent is going to be due on or before April 1st. So definitely we deal with one thing at a time in the Emergency Operations Center. And so we'll cross our bridge when we get there. But I think similar to Rob, if people are working, then there should be no reason why their rent shouldn't be paid. But if they're not working, we can look within our policy because our housing policy does identify an opportunity if people are in hardship, what steps they would have to take in order to have their rent not paid on the first of the month. We do realize we are in the middle of an emergency, so yeah, we may have to look at the policy. If there's anything outside of the policy, we may have to bring that to Chief and Council.
Great, thank you. We have just about 5 to 7 minutes left because we'd only allotted about 45 minutes for this webinar. There are a few more questions left. Next question is there grants or other sources of funding available to bands to access to support the impacts during this time? I think that both of you have kind of touched on the few resources that you've reached out to, which again, that type of information is available through the First Nations Leadership Council websites. I think Indigenous Services Canada is a great starting point to find out what funding sources are available. Tons of information out there. The next question, sorry, I'm just kind of skimming through them because I want to make sure we answer them. The next one is, we have First Nation individuals asking for money from federals, from feds, yet individually, and claiming holdbacks and wanting it personally, yet there are varying degrees of need to be determined, children, elders, etc. I'm not sure if that's an actual question or just a statement.
Well, I've heard that there are a number of nations where the individual community members are asking for the money themselves rather than the nation getting it. And that's a fair question. It really depends on the leadership. And leadership in a number of proactive communities are handling the funding coming in properly and ensuring that everyone's taken care of properly. In the time of these needs, the governments in place are relied on to do everything fairly and equitably. However, there are those out there that may not be. And if there's that kind of challenge, then you're not getting the answers that you want from your chief and council. You might want to reach into another source. And I don't want to volunteer the Public Service Secretariat, but since you're here, I would happily encourage you to answer or ask those questions to someone else, because ideally that funding is for everyone to be taken care of the same way.
Of course. Collette, anything you'd like to add to that?
No, I think like just a note, like any dollars are received from Indigenous Services Canada are for the on-reserve population. And that's our biggest struggle for delivery of any program or service. Most of our members live off reserve. And it's not because of their choice, but it's because of lack of housing, lack of economic development, et cetera, et cetera. One thing affects the other, but we're going to do our best to help all of our community members.
Great. Next question, in regards to Rob's comment about keeping the finances separate, they just wanted to share that RBC is offering a free account for COVID-19. So thank you for sharing that. And next question is, glad to hear emergency management plans are part of the band's protocol. How often are they updated? Who participates? And are they shared with other bands, local municipalities?
So Upper Nicola Band's emergency management plan, every time we start updating it, we get distracted by day-to-day activities. So even though it's well exercised, it may not be the most up-to-date document, but those of us that are implementing it understand it. once you start to exercise or practice it once you're in the middle of an emergency, or doing tabletop exercises outside of your emergency, you get to know it very well. And I think we did have a meeting with the 5 Nicola Valley bands, as well as the municipality of Merritt, TNRD, Thompson-Nicola Regional District, and we all did tabletop exercise, so we can start to become familiar on how we all respond to emergencies.
Our emergency plan has been updated with real life situations probably once a year for the last 5 years, whether it was a water main break or a plane crash or a missing individual that's still missing out near one of the islands near Ahousaht, or the Leviathan whale watching boat capsizing. We've had a number of examples that have focused us to be vigilant on a proper EOC, EMBC type management plan. And I would encourage everyone to take time. I know real world stuff washes over us, and a lot of nations may not know what they don't know, but the key thing is to ask and take the time to strategically plan and to ensure that your governance is set up in such a way that you can actually take on these challenges in future without having to kind of reinvent or invent as you go.
Great, thank you. One last question. Is there an opportunity for getting seeds for home gardens? And I'm wondering if you both can elaborate that on if you have community gardens and kind of how you're managing those, and if there's a plan in place to kind of address food and resources for community members too as well.
Great question. We do have a community garden. It's well stocked. Unfortunately, at this time of year, it's not well grown yet, but yeah, we do have that and have had it going for a number of years.
Here in our community, it was an initiative that we actually identified, the community identified in the comprehensive community plan. We were looking to have that up and running here on April 1st. But because we want to limit the risk of people going shopping, that's something to look at. We might be able to order online and have it delivered perhaps. We want to support people getting gardens in place and community gardens. We do have one at the health center, so people have been able to access those, but because health staff are responding to the emergency at hand, who knows if our garden happens this year or not. If it does, it might be a little bit later.
Thank you, Collette, so much. We're at the 45-minute time, and there are no other questions. Actually, one person was commenting on the RBC. In terms of on-reserve housing, contact your RBC commercial account manager to determine ways to alleviate payments through the ban to roll out community members. So thank you for sharing that information and what RBC offers. Appreciate it. I'm going to ask Jahan, Casey, Bronwyn from our team if they have anything to add or share before we close out. Oh, you're muted, Bronwyn.
Hi.
Oh, there we go. Go ahead, Jahan.
I just wanted to thank you all for your time and for what you're doing, and thank you, Selena, for doing a great job rolling these webinars out. We really appreciate your time, and I know you're very, very busy, Collette and Rob, so much appreciated.
Don't touch your face.
Also, any questions, yes. I guess I should say, that anyone has that we weren't able to touch on today or that occur to you, if you do post them in our First Nation Administrators Network group, hopefully someone else will have an answer or have gone through that experience, and you can continue sharing that way. Thanks.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you both, Rob and Collette, much appreciated. And for the 51 participants who have joined us, thank you for sharing your time here today. And we will have another webinar tomorrow also at 1, so stay posted for a link to that. And we'll be having Chief Chris Derrickson from West Bank and Eric Blaney, who's the Emergency Planning Advisor at North Swamp Tribal Council, on for that one. So we hope to see you again tomorrow.
Great. Thank you both so much. Again, Collette and Rob, raise my hands to you. Thank you for all your wonderful work, and stay healthy, everybody. Thanks so much. Bye.